Hey everyone, welcome to the Electric SuperCar channel. This week we're going to do some MGA work and actually get to troubleshooting. Let's get to it. Alright, so sometimes when I've got a problem, it's good just to get out, away from the problem, let your mind kind of unravel things as you are doing something. Kind of like riding a bike. Do you remember that?
Today we have a new sponsor, Himiway. This is an e-bike. So this one boasts 80 miles on a single charge. All right, the packaging worked out really well. I mean, everything's very well cushioned and everything looks in good condition. So we're gonna get into the instructions and put this together. All right, we got the guide and manual. Looks like a plug. All right, here's the charger. We'll read, but usually you have to charge things first before you use them. We're gonna start the timer, see how long it takes to put this together. All right, we are going. So it comes with this nice little tool set. The only ones that you need that it didn't come with is an 8, a 10, and a 15 millimeter wrench. I just have to mention the welds. I mean, those look amazing.
I think one of my favorite features about this is the comfort and design, in particular the seat. So this is a wide seat and very comfy. This is particularly nice after a long ride.
All right, it looks great. It is not a mini bike. It's a definitely full-size man bike. So I can't wait to take it out, see what it does. All right, about 43 minutes. I'll go ahead and get this charged. All right, we are ready to take it on its maiden voyage. Let's see this. Turn on the light. Oh yeah. Trip, ride, time, trip, max speed, average speed.
Another great feature is the 26x4 Kenda all-terrain tires. And just to make sure you're safe, it's got an integrated lighting system. This does have an extended battery range and has one of the longest enduring battery lives.
All right, first time riding an e-bike, what do you think?
It's crazy.
More or less enjoyable than your other bike?
More.
So if you're in the market for an e-bike or just looking for a way to have some fun, I will leave a link in the description below. We've got some area behind the seats, some residual brackets and things for the original 6-volt batteries. So we need to cut that away. We're going to design some things, get some send parts, and that will allow us to mount all the last components.
So there is quite a bit of space behind the seats here, and these brackets were originally there to hold 2 6-volt batteries. Now those aren't going to be used anymore, so we're actually going to cut out those and make room for some bigger trays to house some of these components. So let's get to chopping. Right here as well, there. So yeah, just stripped it all off. We'll get this welded, and then once it's welded, we'll put another coat of the chassis roll bar paint. All right, just like that, those brackets are gone. I spent probably way too much time, but I got that looking good. All right, so weld there. I've got weld there, and you probably can't see it, but down on that bottom side. I've got one more to do right there. Then we're on to the other side. Once everything cools down, I'll put a layer of the roll bar chassis paint, and then this will be settled. Got both of these compartments kind of made now. So this one I decided to weld from the bottom, which is not easy welding upside down, and the puddle kind of wants to drag downward. This one I did on top. I probably should have done that to both. Just gives a little better weld. Nevertheless, we've got the braces and everything else welded. I had to re-weld a hard line to a soft line mount. But yeah, we are now going to do some corrosion control. We've got some roll bar and chassis paint that we're going to paint. I painted most of this before, but I left some of it uncoated because we needed to weld. So now that we got the boxes made, those trays for all the components, next we're going to turn our attention to the 12-volt system. So we're going to start with the battery. I got to make some battery cables. There's even a low voltage cutoff switch. For some of the DIY stuff, I like these sort of terminal contacts where it actually gives you lots of different places to attach various wires. I picked these up just on Amazon, so I'll leave a link in the description below. All right, so the kit came with one of these. This is kind of a low voltage cutoff switch. This is just a lead acid battery. If you're using a lithium battery, it's kind of bad if you let things get too low, too discharged. That can actually ruin the battery. So something like this is just made to kind of cut the power after it drains beyond a certain point. All right, this is just a circuit breaker, so you can trip it on purpose. That way it's really nice to kind of be able to disconnect power. But this one is going to go from the battery just before all the fuses, kind of like a main fuse. All right, so it says B- should go to the ground, but the challenge I have is like, that is super close for like positive and negative battery terminals. So I'll see if I can do something to make it a little safer. So that is the high voltage junction box. So we've got the big bundle of wires here. So there's going to be one that goes connector there. The rest of them are going to go over to here to a fuse relay box. So closely related to the battery is the DC to DC converter. So that's going to supply the battery with power while the car is on. So we need to get that all wired up. We're just going to make the other end of this plug. So this one goes into the DC to DC converter. This one's going to go in the high voltage junction box. And again, with these type of connectors, you just want to think through it. So this was like so that you don't have to redo a connector because it's expensive. So we want that much conductor. All right, so this shield should go back something about like that. We're just going to be making cable that goes from the DC to DC converter to from the circuit breaker to the battery. All right, time to put things back together. So order of operations, put the battery in, then the DC to DC converter, plug everything in, and we're just about there.
We've got the parts welded in place. We've got the components that are in there. We just need to do a little bit of last wiring before we can see if things turn on.
I got to clean up some wires and things, but I think we've got everything back here connected. I think there's the accelerator lever, and I'll check other wires, but I think we're just about ready to do our first trial. Oh, I've also got to put batteries and bus bars in the front battery box. One additional thing the customer wanted was a high voltage cutoff switch. So this is kind of just a manual switch that kind of leaves all the high voltage to the batteries and nowhere else. So we've got a switch that we ordered. We actually 3D printed a cover. Ready? Ready? Go get it. So we just need to splice some cables, put on some lugs, and get everything together. All right, so we've got the high voltage switch in. Now we're gonna, a photo bomber. It's his birthday today, 1 year old. Ready, go get it. Now we got the high voltage switch in. We're gonna finish up the battery box, the front one. We just need to put the bus bars on, make all the connections, get the BMS connected as well. All right, we got the bus bars in place. They're not connected yet. So time to glove up, get some high voltage going. All right, we've got these all connected now. It puts us up to about 89 volts, so not super high. Usually things less than 60 volts, I think you're okay without gloves, but still we're being extra careful. So we're gonna go ahead and put all the BMS cell taps in. All right, this is the BMS display, and I've got these wires coming out of the dash. So I believe this is the end of the CAN circuit. Actually, there we are. So that's 120 ohms. And then once we plug it in here, we got 60 ohms. So this is indeed the end of the CAN circuit, which is good. That's what we planned for. So we just need to wire up the throttle lever and Then we've got to wire some things to power and ground. I think we're about ready. All right, we're just gonna wire up the throttle lever, and we're just gonna use some of these connectors here. All right, I believe I've got everything wired. I'm going to be testing things out for the first time. Just gotta make a couple ground connections. Main power should be on. Here's keyed power. So I hear some sounds from there. Contactor's not going though. Not getting anything on the CAN bus from there.
All right, I think we all knew that it wasn't just gonna turn on and work. So yeah, now it's time to troubleshoot.
All right, so we're slowly making progress. Got things plugged in. Finally got some power to this one, but it says there are no communications with the, I think the main BMS. So we're gonna make sure we've got good communication there before we proceed. One of the first things I thought I'd check is I checked continuity, so meaning we've got continuity for the CAN low and CAN high to the plug to the high junction voltage box. So we're good there. We confirmed we got power and ground, at least to the screen. So now we're gonna check the BMS satellite units, which means we're gonna get into this one again. We've got green flashing lights, which according to the manual says that we are good to go.
This one, however, upside down, says no comms to BVMS.
It's got power. I'll just double check continuity that the CAN is here as well as there, that we've got things wired correctly. Isolation fault.
All right, for the moment I was able to clear the air, but it says our pack voltage is 37 volts. So I'm wondering if it's just reading just the back pack. 14, even that's like just not even close to the right. Isolation 0%. I don't know. It did say there's an isolation error, so I will go ahead and check the high voltage to the chassis, make sure that we've got good isolation. But yeah, we are well on the way to troubleshooting. All right, here we go. We've got a couple 0 voltages. So yeah, we only have 10, so I wonder if it's just mad that they're out of sequence or something. So these are all like 3.7. There's one that's 3.6. It's interesting though. So this is module 0. If I hit next, it doesn't do anything. Nothing changes. Previous, nothing. So I can't get anywhere. Interesting. All right, well, we'll have to figure that out.
I've traced the voltage problem to in the rear battery box here. So we're gonna go ahead and disconnect the connectors and remove it. So the other thing I'm gonna check out while I'm here is there is, I don't know, 2 fingers room up there, so we could actually raise this by that much. Kind of want to see if I believe that that's enough that would get these guys out of harm's way. I know there's lots of other people that talked about this bump stop. These are not permanently routed right now, so we either go inside or outside. I think I like inside better, just so that's not in the way. All right, I just took out the rear battery box. Battery ran out, so you didn't see all of that, but we're gonna go ahead and take out the 72 screws. The other thing is, I believe I can just remake these mounts for the battery box and get it another, what do we say, 2 fingers, 3 fingers higher. And I think that's gonna give enough room for the plugs. All right, I just tested everything with the loss of isolation meter, and both the front battery box and the rear battery box are great. However, when when the rear battery box was in, there was not great. So I think it must have been when the lid was on that was touching a cell tap or something. So we'll look at things again, we'll put it back on and test one more time before we put it back in the car. All right, so here's the battery pack. I think we found what our problem was. So when the lid was here, I believe there was 2 wires that looked like they were maybe here and got squished when they were pinched down. So that made the insulation really thin, or even conducted the electricity there. So we'll fix these wires, like splice or cut short. And I think that's also potentially why 2 of the cell voltages were not reading. So let's fix that, and then I think we'll be in a much better spot. All right, so I disconnected all the high voltage as well as the cell taps. So we'll go ahead and fix those wires. Put this one back together. I scraped off all the gasket material and put on new gasket material. Got things tightened down. This one, we're now at 0.8 giga ohms. The front one was at 2.2 giga ohms. So again, anything greater than like 1 million ohms or 100 million ohms is considered really good. So we are gonna try to put this back in place and see if we get some better results. So we've put things back in place. It's not mounted, but it's in place, plugged in. Previous times it has woken up with alarms beeping. So we're hoping this time it will not. All right, it says pre-charge failed. So last time we actually got pack voltage, but it wasn't correct. Now we got none of those. We'll keep troubleshooting. I think something's still going on, because otherwise I think it should still read cell voltages. Yeah, so it still says pre-charge failed. Still nothing. That's only the rear battery pack though. How is it not getting the full battery pack? Okay, so pack voltage is 44 volts, which doesn't seem right. 0.7 times 12, is that what it's thinking is 44 volts? Yeah. So maybe it's just the cells it can read. But it didn't give me any error messages. The interesting thing is ignition's not on, so let's try that now. So we got good isolation. So it's when I supply power or ignition power to the high voltage junction box, then it comes up with the error that the pre-charge is not working. I'm gonna go into the manual for this one and see if I can get the other satellites to work. Okay, so it says if we press for longer than a second, we can enter, there we go, enter setup. All right, so this is where we need to go. So module ID 0, that's good. All right. So now we finally got our pack voltage. So now this is module 0. So we're like 3.72. Okay. So let's try turning on now that we've switched it to do the pre-charge. See if it works now. Nope, pre-charge still fails. All right, so the system is on. One other thing I'll check. So I guess let me go through some of the systems. So DC to DC converter is not working right now because the pre-charge needs to be on in order for that to work. So that one's not working yet. One other system I think I can try, because the pre-charge does not need to be active, I don't think, is charging. So there is a non-zero chance that this will actually work. I heard a noise over there. Let's see what it says. It says charging, but it's got 0 amps. So that's interesting. So that one might be a setting. I'll check the settings real quick, make sure I don't have like a 0 amp setting, but yeah, that one's not working either. I didn't think it would quite work, but thought it was worth a try. right, we're gonna try one more time. This one I've got the keyed ignition on for high voltage junction box. We'll see if that does anything. Yeah, this time I didn't hear it click or anything. So the first time I did it, it actually clicked and said charging, but it was charging at 0 amps. Now when I do it, it just says available, like it doesn't even detect that it's plugged in. So one more thing we'll have to chase down. All right, this is my loss of isolation meter. I've just got this going to a part of the chassis, and I'm doing this kind of, I'll say before the contactor as well as after the contactor. So first I'll go before, so 0.8 giga ohms. So again, really good resistance. Here is after the contactor, so 0.1. So meaning the battery box itself is very isolated, somewhere between this connection and the wiring, including the high voltage junction box, we've got not very good resistance. I also do it to the motor controller. So here's the motor controller. Again, 0.1. So again, that's pretty low. I think on the I think on the BMS screen it shows 20%. Again, we want to be at 100%. But what I'm going to show you is I'm going to go to the high voltage junction box, unplug things, and show that we get like, again, 1 or 2 giga ohms. So it seems like the problem is not any of the wiring or cabling, it's something in the high voltage junction box. So here we've got the high voltage junction box, and I'll just go ahead and disconnect cables. All right, so I don't know if you can tell, but right there we've disconnected that one. Back there we've disconnected that one. And we're gonna go ahead and try this again. So 2.2 giga ohms, 1.8, 2.2 giga ohms. So again, without those cables connected, we have great isolation. The isolation problem seems to happen when those cables are connected to the high voltage junction box, which makes me believe that the issue is happening within the high voltage junction box. Please help me understand where my logic might be wrong and what I might need to check or test. But yeah, the other thing is I do not believe currently that the high voltage junction box is switching on to high voltage, meaning I do not ever get high voltage to the motor controller. I don't get high voltage to the DC to DC converter.
So one of the issues I seem to be having is with the high voltage junction box, where I seem to have all the cables and everything connected correctly. It's still giving me a lot of errors, a lot of things aren't functioning. It's not turning the system on, meaning the high voltage is not getting through. Also, it seems like there's a leak or a not very good isolation from the high voltage circuit to the rest of the car. And that also seems to be happening just essentially in that high voltage junction box. All right, so I've actually reached out to the company, even though they're no longer in business. They kind of were acquired by a different company. We've kind of got with an individual, and he's agreed to look at the unit and see if he can find out if there's anything wrong. So I believe the battery management system's working. I think that's about the only one that seems like it's working. That's a big deal, but we don't have charging working. That's probably the next easiest one to get to work. If we can't work with this high voltage junction box, that should be able to tell it to charge. There are some other options that are not that difficult to implement. However, the high voltage junction box does have a ton of connections to the motor controller. So if we have to do something different there, that's going to be much more time intensive.
So we got a ton done. It was a little bit of just finishing all the last little things. We got those new trays installed, all the components installed, all the wiring complete, and then we actually got to turn it on, which was pretty exciting. Then starts the troubleshooting. So we've got a lot more to do, so stay tuned. See you next time. Wake up happy. Oh, doggy, go away. I'm trying to do some filming. Come on, ready? Go get it. Why does it say bat? I just changed the batteries. Airplane. So many airplanes where I live. The battery. You keep coming back, dude.